My wife cheated on me with David for 7 months. When I caught her, she proposed an open marriage to keep seeing him. But I agreed and documented everything for 14 months. Now, she lost custody. Her lover and works retail. I'm 38 years old. I own a construction company in Denver, and I need to tell this story because what happened over the last 2 years basically turned my life upside down, but in a way that, looking back, was exactly what I needed, even though I didn't know it at the time. I guess I should start at the beginning, when I met Sarah about 14 years ago at a coffee shop downtown. One of those places where the coffee costs more than it should, but people go anyway because it has good Wi-Fi and indie music in the background. I was there reviewing blueprints for a project. She was with a laptop working on some graphic design stuff, and we basically collided trying to grab the same seat by the window. It was one of those corny moments you see in movies, where we both laughed and started talking, and 3 hours later we were still there chatting like we'd known each other our whole lives. The thing is, Sarah was, or at least seemed to be at the time, exactly what I was looking for. She was funny, smart, had that energy that makes everything seem more interesting, and physically she was beautiful, like those women who when they walk into a place people turn to look. We dated for about 6 months before I proposed, and yeah, I know, it was fast, but at the time it felt right. We got married in a small ceremony with family and close friends, nothing fancy. And here comes the part I'd later regret. We didn't do a prenup because, well, I was young and stupid and thought love was enough, and those things were for people who didn't trust their partner. I basically signed my financial death sentence without knowing it, but anyway, let's continue. The first few years were good, honestly. My construction business was growing. Well, we started with small residential projects and scaled up to bigger things, commercial developments, major renovations, that kind of stuff. Sarah kept working in graphic design from home, which was convenient, and after about 3 years of marriage, our daughter Sophia was born. 2 years later came Noah, our son, and at that point Sarah decided to stop working completely to be a full-time mom. I was okay with that. I mean, my business generated enough money to maintain a good lifestyle. We had a big house in a decent neighborhood, 2 cars, annual vacations, that whole perfect suburban family image that people put on Instagram. But like with everything in life, things aren't what they seem on the surface. Fast forward about 8 years after Sarah stopped working, the kids were older now. Sophia was like 10 years old, and Noah 8. And I started noticing Sarah was going out a lot more than normal. She had these girls' nights out, that's what she called them, where she'd meet up with her friends, supposedly to have dinner or drink wine or whatever women do at those gatherings. At first, it didn't seem weird to me. Like, everyone needs time with friends, and I spent a lot of hours working, so it seemed fair that she'd have her space too. But then it started becoming more and more frequent. Once a week turned into twice, then 3 times, and she'd always come home late, like 1 or 2 in the morning, sometimes smelling like alcohol, and with her phone glued to her hand like she was expecting important messages. I'm not one of those paranoid guys who check their wives' phones, or at least I wasn't, but there was something that didn't add up. Sarah was distant, like when someone is physically present but mentally somewhere else. Sex practically disappeared. And when I tried to talk to her about anything deeper than family logistics or bills to pay, she seemed annoyed or bored. She'd tell me she was tired, that raising kids was exhausting, that she needed her own time, and I like an idiot believed her and felt guilty for even questioning her. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. All the signs were there. But I guess when you don't want to see something, your brain helps you ignore it. Everything exploded one night about 1.5 years ago. Sarah had gone out again with her friends. I stayed with the kids, put them to bed around 9 at night, and stayed watching TV in the living room. Her phone, which she'd left charging in the kitchen, started vibrating like crazy with messages. Normally, I wouldn't have touched it. But something in me, I don't know if it was intuition or what, made me get up and look at it. The screen showed like 5 messages from a contact saved just as D, and the preview of the last message said something about missing her and not being able to wait to see her again. My stomach dropped to the floor. I literally felt like I'd been kicked in the chest. I grabbed the phone, unlocked the screen. I knew her code because it had never been secret between us, and what I found basically destroyed what was left of my marriage at that moment. Messages. Hundreds of messages between Sarah and this guy named David. Like conversations dating back months, about 6 or 7 months it seemed. They weren't just casual friendship messages, they were explicit, sexual, detailed, describing things they'd done together and things they planned to do. There were photos too. I won't go into details, but imagine the worst, and you're probably right. This David apparently was a guy who worked in finance, mid-level from what I could deduce from their conversations, divorced, no kids, basically with all the time in the world to be the other man in my wife's life. The girls' nights out weren't with friends, they were with him, at hotels, at his apartment, once even in our car, when I thought she'd gone to the supermarket. I sat there in the kitchen for I don't know how long, just reading and reading, feeling how each message was like another blow, another betrayal, another lie exposed. When Sarah got home around 1 in the morning, I was still awake, sitting in the living room with her phone in my hand. She saw me, and her face changed immediately. She knew that I knew. You know what I mean? I didn't need to say anything. She saw the phone and knew everything was over. I expected her to deny it, to cry, to ask for forgiveness, the typical thing you imagine in these situations, but instead she got defensive. She told me I didn't understand her, that she'd been feeling lonely for years, that my work consumed me and she needed to feel alive again. All that garbage that cheating people say to justify the unjustifiable. I told her she was destroying our family, to think about the kids. How could she do this to us? And she, I swear you won't believe this, proposed that we have an open marriage. An open marriage. Just like that. Like it was nothing. Like it was the most logical solution in the world. She told me she loved me, that she didn't want a divorce, that she didn't want to break up the family, but that she also wanted to keep seeing David, because he made her feel things that I no longer made her feel. She gave me this whole explanation about how modern marriages work differently, that monogamy is an outdated social construct, that we could make it work if we were both open to exploring other relationships. I sat there listening to her, feeling like I was in an alternate reality. This woman, who I'd been married to for like 11 years, the mother of my 2 children, was literally asking me for permission to keep fucking another guy while we maintained our facade of a happy marriage. My first instinct was to tell her to go to hell, ask for a divorce right there, kick her out of the house, but then something in my brain clicked. If I divorced her at that moment, in the heat of the moment, without preparation, I was going to lose a lot of things. We didn't have a prenup. She technically didn't work. The kids spent more time with her than with me because I worked long hours. And Colorado has community property laws where basically everything you earn during the marriage is divided equally. Plus, if she got a good lawyer, she could argue she deserved primary custody of the kids because she was the primary caregiver, and I'd end up seeing them alternating weekends and paying child support that would basically finance her life while she continued not working. No, if I was going to do this, I had to do it right. I had to do it strategically. So I told her yes. I told her I was willing to try an open marriage, that I needed time to process everything, but that we could make it work. The look of relief on her face was almost offensive, like she really believed I was okay with sharing her with another guy. We established some ground rules, or at least apparently, things like being discreet, not bringing other people to the house, keeping the kids out of all this, that kind of thing. She kept seeing David. I started planning my exit. The first thing I did was hire a private investigator. I needed documentation, evidence of everything, not just the affair, but how Sarah was handling her role as a mother now that she had this new distraction in her life. The investigator was a quiet guy, professional, who charged me like $2,000 a week but was worth every penny. He gave me photos of Sarah with David at restaurants, hotels, his apartment. One time he even followed them on a weekend getaway that she told me was with her friends. But more important than that, he documented how Sarah was increasingly absent from the kids' lives. She'd arrive late to pick up Sophia from her after-school activities, forget to prepare dinners or replace them with takeout, leave Noah with babysitters or with me more and more frequently so she could go out with David. All of this was documented with photos, timestamps, detailed reports that my divorce lawyer would later use like gold. During this time, I did exactly the opposite. I got more involved with the kids, way more than I had been before. I adjusted my work schedule so I could take them to school in the mornings, be present at dinner, help them with homework, go to their soccer games and school recitals. It wasn't hard because I genuinely wanted to be with them, and also because I could see how Sarah was neglecting them and someone had to fill that void. The kids noticed the change, especially Sophia, who at 10 years old was already pretty perceptive. She'd ask me why Mom went out so much, why I was home more now, and I'd tell her that Mom needed time with her friends and that I wanted to spend more time with them. Which was true even though it wasn't the whole truth. Sarah was in her own bubble, basically. She believed she'd found the perfect situation. A husband who paid all the bills and gave her stability, and a lover who gave her excitement and adventure. What she didn't expect was that I'd also use this open marriage opening to my advantage, though not in the way she thought. I didn't go out looking for random hookups or anything like that, but after about 4 months of this weird situation, I got a message from Rachel, Sarah's best friend since college. Rachel had been distant from the friend group lately, and she wrote me asking if we could talk because she'd heard rumors about what was happening and wanted to know my side of the story. We met for coffee, at the same coffee shop where I'd met Sarah years ago, which was ironic in retrospect. Rachel told me that Sarah had told her about the open marriage, but that she knew there was more to the story, that she knew Sarah well enough to know she'd probably pressured me into accepting something I didn't want. I told her everything. Not with all the details, but enough for her to understand the real situation. Rachel apologized on behalf of her friend, told me she couldn't believe Sarah had done something like that, and basically ended her friendship with her after that conversation. But the interesting thing was that Rachel and I kept in touch after that. It wasn't planned or anything, like I didn't have an agenda to seduce my wife's best friend. But we started seeing each other more often to talk, for me to vent, and eventually it became something more. Rachel was 36 years old, worked as a manager at a marketing company, was divorced with no kids, and honestly was everything Sarah had stopped being: present, attentive, interested in me as a person, and not just as a paycheck. After about 2 months of seeing each other, we started a relationship. Though it was weird because technically I wasn't cheating because Sarah and I had this stupid open marriage agreement. But I knew Sarah wouldn't like it, especially because it was with Rachel. And I was right. Sarah found out about 3 months after Rachel and I were together. I don't remember exactly how. I think one of the kids mentioned something about seeing Rachel at the house or something like that. Sarah's reaction was pure distilled hypocrisy. She got angry, yelled, accused me of betraying her with her best friend, told me how could I do that to her. I just looked at her and said, "Really? Are you seriously telling me this when you've been fucking David for almost a year?" She told me it wasn't the same, that Rachel was her friend, that was a line I shouldn't have crossed. And I reminded her that she was the one who wanted the open marriage, that she established that we could both see other people, and that Rachel had stopped being her friend the moment Sarah decided to shit on her family. But here comes the part that gave me the most satisfaction in this whole mess. David, Sarah's great love, the guy for whom she destroyed her marriage, started losing interest once the affair was no longer secret. Apparently, the thrill of the affair, the risk of being discovered, that was part of what attracted him. Once everything was out in the open, and Sarah was basically available to him whenever he wanted, the thing lost its charm. He started responding to her messages later, canceling plans, making excuses about being busy with work. Sarah was devastated. I could see it, even though she tried to hide it. The guy for whom she'd risked everything was losing interest in her, like you lose interest in an old toy, and she didn't know how to handle it. I kept documenting everything this whole time. I had months of evidence of maternal negligence, of the affair, of expenses Sarah made on clothes and things to look good for David using our joint accounts, of messages where she basically admitted the kids were an inconvenience to her plans with him. My lawyer had told me to wait at least a year before filing for divorce, to establish a clear pattern of behavior, and to make sure my greater involvement with the kids was well documented too. So that's what I did. I waited, played the game, acted like the open marriage was working, while inside I counted the days until I could get out of this. Finally, after 14 months of this hell, I filed the divorce papers. Sarah received them one morning. When I had already left with the kids, I'd planned for us to be out of the house that day to avoid a scene in front of them. When we got back that night, she was furious, screaming about how could I do this to her, that we'd agreed to make the open marriage work. that I was destroying the family. I told her calmly that she destroyed the family when she started fucking David, that the open marriage was her idea to justify her infidelity, and that I had just waited for the right moment to get out of this situation in the way that would best protect our children. The divorce process was brutal but effective. My lawyer presented all the evidence we'd compiled, mountains of documentation about Sarah's affair, her negligence with the kids, how I had assumed the role of primary caregiver during the last year while she was busy with her lover. Witnesses included the kids' teachers who confirmed I was the one who attended all school meetings and events, neighbors who had seen how I was the one taking them everywhere and picking them up. Even the babysitter Sarah had hired testified that Sarah constantly called her to stay with the kids so she could go out. Sarah tried to fight, hired a lawyer who tried to argue she deserved custody for being the mother, and deserved generous support because she'd sacrificed her career to raise our children, but the evidence was too solid against her. The judge, a woman about 60 years old who didn't seem to have much patience for nonsense, was pretty straightforward in her decision. She granted me primary custody of Sophia and Noah. Sarah would have supervised visits initially, and then every other weekend. Once the judge was satisfied, she could maintain a stable environment for the kids. As for division of assets, yes, I had to divide some assets because Colorado is a community property state, but the judge took into account that I was the only one generating income and that I'd built the construction business with my own effort, so Sarah received considerably less than she would have. Gotten under normal circumstances, spousal support was limited, only 3 years, and an amount that was enough to help her get established, but not to maintain the lifestyle she was accustomed to without working. The judge basically told her that at 42 years old, and with no medical reason preventing her from working, it was time for her to contribute to her own support. Sarah moved to a small apartment in a less expensive part of Denver, had to get a part-time job at a home decor store because her graphic design skills were rusty after so many years without working. David, of course, had completely disappeared by that point. Apparently, he'd even blocked her number after she called him too many times trying to reconnect. She lost her family, her lifestyle, her lover, and her best friend, all because she couldn't keep her legs closed and thought she could have everything without consequences. I, on the other hand, stayed in our house with the kids. Rachel moved in with us about 6 months after finalizing the divorce. I didn't want to rush anything, but there came a point where it just made sense. The kids adore her. Sophia especially has a good relationship with her, and Noah says Rachel makes better pancakes than his mom, which is probably true because Sarah was never very good at cooking. My business keeps growing well, actually better than before, because now I can focus without the constant drama and negative energy Sarah brought to the house. Do I feel bad about how I handled all this? Honestly, not much. I could have exploded when I discovered the affair. I could have kicked Sarah out of the house that same night. But then I probably would have lost my kids and half of what I built. Instead, I played the game, waited, documented, and got out of the situation with what mattered most to me intact. Sarah had every opportunity in the world to do things differently. To be honest, to end the marriage in an adult way before starting something with someone else, but instead she chose to lie, cheat, and then have the audacity to ask me to accept her infidelity as if it were something normal and healthy. Last week, Sophia asked me if Mom was ever going to come back to live with us. I told her the truth in an age-appropriate way, that sometimes people who love each other stop being good together, and that it's better to be apart but happy than together and miserable. She thought about it for a moment and then hugged me and told me she was happy we were together. Her, Noah, Rachel, and me. Noah was playing video games in the living room and yelled that he was happy too, and Rachel was in the kitchen preparing dinner and looked at me with that smile she has, the one that reminds me why it's worth starting over after everything falls apart. And that's enough for now, I guess. More than enough, actually.